Here we go, y'all. Here we go. Another season of Diverse Talking Heads podcast. I'm your host, Calvin Gibbs, and we're so happy to bring you season three of Diverse Talking Heads podcast. We have a great season lined up for you for this season, and we are going to start it off with a very serious issue that's going on in our country right now. We're going to talk about border protection. Who should be protecting our borders? Should it be the states or should it be the US government? And with me, I have a great group of panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, just first name only. We will start with the man with the glasses on, the Cal Ripken of the podcast. Take it away, Charlie.
Thanks, Calvin. I'm Charlie Ramsey. I'm delighted to be here for our third season of the DTL, and I'm delighted to see many of our regular panelists here as well, and we have some new ones as well. So I'm very looking forward to this, and of course, working with you, Calvin.
All right, all right. Thank you, Charlie. And I'm a little confused. So I got to ask the question: what is DTL?
Diverse talk. Oh, do I say eight? My mind is not running here. I have like three thoughts going in. Diverse talking head, sir. Sorry, DTH. My
And
initials.
yes, we're
My initials
and
were not
yes,
coming
we're
up fast enough in my brain tonight.
okay. We're kicking the season off just
And
the
I think
way I like it.
you're still Calvin, right? That's
I'm still Calvin.
okay.
I'm still
All
listening.
things could change over the summer. So
I'm still listening very intently. And next we have
obviously.
Kaushal.
Hi, this is Koshal. I'm relatively new to this podcast. I'm so new that I thought we were only starting season two, but now I just learned that this is actually season three.
Absolutely, the seasons go by so quickly, like kids growing up. You look around and it's another season. So here we go, season three. And next we have Amy. Amy, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. This is Amy. Super excited to be here. And way to start us off with a big topic, Calvin. Thank you so much for giving us great stuff to work with, as always.
Indeed, indeed. Welcome back, Amy. And my friend, my man, the guy that I would go to war with, in the trenches with, my man Dan. Dan, welcome back again.
Well, thank you, Calvin. This is Dan. I'm looking forward to the third season. The first two were a lot of fun. Great having some folks who gone the whole path and those who joined us along the way. It just adds more of the diversity and makes it more fun and interesting.
All
Back
right.
to you, Calvin.
Yes, sir. And next we have a friend of mine all the way from back in high school days. Karen, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Karen. Yes, Calvin and I go way, way back. I'm glad we're able to get together again and have great conversation. And welcome to all new members.
All right. Thank you, Karen. And we do have a special guest panelist with us this evening. I met him just a few weeks ago and enjoyed the conversation that I had with him so much. I asked him to please be a guest panelist this evening. Marcette, please. Oh, you're already unmuted. Please say hello to the guests, to the audience.
Yes, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcette. Like you said, Calvin and I just met recently and we hit it off well. So I am looking forward to hearing the discussion and having a robust conversation around this topic. So I can't wait to get started.
All right, fantastic. So let's get right into it. Let's jump into the pool with both feet and get wet here. We know that there has been for years now a serious problem at the borders with migrants coming into the US. And it seems that now it's so big that it's using the title of crises, migrant crises, okay? that always signifies that something is so out of hand that they put the crises on it. When it's just a trickle and nobody's really paying attention, it is what it is. But as soon as it gets out of control, it's a crisis. So we have a migrant crisis of people coming across the border. But this is not new. This has been happening for a while. And this is not the only group of migrants that have come into the US. So, who should be actually guarding our borders? There's immigration policies about who can come in, how many can come in, this, that, and the other. And it seems like right now it's just a hole, and people are just coming in droves. Who should be protecting us and our borders? Anybody want to take this question? Dan, I saw your hand.
Well, I think it comes down to a couple things. One, Congress has abdicated their responsibility for decades now, and hasn't changed anything, just complained about it. And we kind of send them there to do the work. What I feel is states take care of what's inside their borders. That's their job. State government's supposed to take care of what goes on inside their borders. The US government is hired to take care of what happens outside our borders and the whole borders of the US. So I believe that the responsibility lays at the federal level. And that this is a national crisis. And it's also not fair to just make it the responsibility of the border states. What about the ones in the middle, like us, where I live? So I believe strongly that it's a federal responsibility. Whether they've been doing it well or not is a whole nother question, but I believe the responsibility lays there.
All right, Dan. Thank you for that response. Karen, I saw your hand.
You did. You did. I'm with Dan. It should be a federal. The Fed should be in charge of it. But here's the thing: our representatives who are in Congress don't want to be responsible. They're not helping to me, they're not helping Homeland Security secure the borders, providing the right resources, providing the right tools to allow people to come into the United States legally the right way. There's no way in the world that we don't know that people are trying to come to America for opportunity, but we can't stop everyone and anyone. And it's not just the Hispanics, it's all countries are coming through Mexico into the United States with no monies, no anything to take care of themselves. But how does the state, on the state level, how do they budget for these folks coming in?
All right, thank you, Karen. So the government, let's say, is not doing their job. Okay, we have these people from the other countries coming into the U.S. up through Mexico, from Venezuela, wherever they're coming from, South America up into Mexico, into the U.S. Okay, they're not being stopped. They're here. Okay, the U.S. government didn't stop them for whatever reason. There's so many of them, they can't control them coming in. They're here. Okay, is it right to, at that point, put them on buses and then ship them to other cities? Let's say, Kosha, what do you say about that?
Kevin, I don't think that's right at all. I know that this border states have a real problem, but shipping them to other cities seems like kidnapping to me, especially I apologize. So, Calvin, I don't think it's right at all for migrants to be bused to other cities by the border states. I know that the border states have got a real tough problem, but busing the immigrants to other places sounds like kidnapping to me, especially the way it's been done by telling the immigrants they're going to one place, there'll be jobs and help for them, and then shipping them to another place where there's nothing for them. It's that's not a good solution.
It's not a solution. Okay. Amy, what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you for the question. I completely agree that the way that it's been done, particularly some of the examples we've heard, like I think Kushal was referencing, we're going to Martha's Vineyard for jobs or whatever, and then they're just left and they don't speak the language, they have no connections. I think that there's been a lot of terrible things about the way that that it's been handled. I do want to disagree a bit, though. I think that with better organization and more resources, I don't personally have a problem with helping people relocate to different states. I think that, again, the way that it has been handled, there's absolutely several examples of wrong ways to do it. But I think if we are being very sensitive to things like family reunification, keeping track of who's going where, making sure that on the receiving end, there are, English as a second language opportunities set up, actual jobs, classes to help people become citizens, like whatever it is that they might need. I don't know that people are specifically trying to move into Texas. I think they're trying to come to the country. And I realize that I might be talking about a utopia that's not going to exist, but I don't see why the federal government can't work more closely with the states in order to help rehome people across this giant nation that we're a part of, as opposed to keeping them all in one place. So what I described, I realize might be very, very, very difficult to achieve. And I do, again, want to say that I think that your analogy to kidnapping in the examples that we have seen is completely right on. But in general, I don't have a problem with helping people move to other areas in the country. I really don't. I think if they're coming here for a new opportunity, then there's opportunities all over the place. Again, though it will take a lot for us to get there.
All right. Very good. Well, let's consider this for a second. The U.S. government is not stopping them from coming in. They're in. Kidnapping, yeah. Let's say it's kidnapping because they didn't send them where they said they were going. Okay. But what if they actually did send them to a Martha's Vineyard or even Disney World? Marcette, is there any solution as to where they should be sent, or should they just stay in Texas with no money, not knowing the language, and find their way to wherever they need to go, continue to walk? Your thoughts?
I would say that it's a fairly a layered situation. One, I would say that the ones that are coming in, obviously, like someone said, that they're here for a reason. Supposedly there are more opportunities here, and we can also parse out, and that would be another show on why there are more opportunities here instead of their own countries. I do think that, unfortunately, the situation has been weaponized politically, where the governors of Texas and Florida are sending them to quote unquote blue states to kind of overload their resources. And I don't think that's necessarily the answer either. But what I also find interesting is that when we talk about the border crisis or migrant crisis or people coming in, we never talk. It's looked at in one narrative. And I can tell you, I was in Chicago. If you're familiar with the Daily Center, some years ago, and they were having a rally, a migrant rally, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people who were here from Europe, and they had, and that hadn't been talked about. People who would come over on student visas and stay, this, that, and the other, and I was on the bus with a lot of them, and they were laughing about how, man, this thing is so funny that everyone is looking at other groups of people and other ethnicities, and we come here and no one looks at us. And when I thought, and I, of course, obviously I had seen it before, but are they not equally a drain on the resources, and they're allowed to move around freely where that issue is overlooked for the people coming from the southern border, and that seems to be all the rage. So I guess I'm answering the question by throwing out another avenue, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. And I like the fact you said about not watching them or not seeing a group of people, because Charlie, the Border Patrol is supposed to be protecting or looking for certain things. People bringing drugs and guns, and are looking for felons or people that's wanted, and they're getting so overwhelmed they can't do that. So obviously, these people are going to be in our cities, most namely New York and Chicago area.
Yeah.
How do we, the people, get the government to put the right protection in play or the right system in play? Because not only are these people coming in, and the word was being kidnapped and being misappropriated, but our way of living is being put at danger as well.
Mhm.
Because we know that some of them are going to be taking advantage. Okay, they're not seeking asylum, they're not running away, they're looking for opportunities to bring things that we don't want into the country. How do we get the government to do their jobs?
Well, there has to be, in fact, we were just talking before the show, a word that came up. There has to be a disciplined approach on this. So they have to decide, what things here we support our militaries and all that. And there's a concern that people come in, and that's happened throughout history. It's not unique to this time. It's always happened, and they've come from other places. And they have to figure out a disciplined way to do that. In other words, give the right funding to the border control so they can protect the border. Ideally, that should not be with a wall. That's not what we're ultimately about here. I would be saddened if that day were occur, and that's been kicking around for a while. This subject is a personal thing to me because my first spouse was from another country, and I met her in an academic setting, and we went through the immigration process and all that. And before we split, she became American citizen. So I know the immigration went through that personally on that, although it was a while ago. So it is important to me, and I knew a lot, at least particularly back then, what other people in other countries were dealing with, and the desire to be here because of whatever reasons in their country, because it was not economically poor or repressive in some way. One thing, there's just so many side stories on this. With the immigration, we know that the situation in Venezuela is very dire. And I was just reading the other day, there are people who are literally walking from Venezuela all the way up to the U.S. border, which is a couple thousand miles or something, because the situation in Venezuela is so bad right now that they just want to get the hell out of there, basically. So I think, there's going to have to be some kind of disciplined approach to this. It is a federal issue because it's dealing with another country. It's not a state issue. It would be the same thing if the Canadians wanted to come through North Dakota or whatever. So, that's an international issue on that. So that has to be dealt with on the federal level. And, funding needs to come from them on that.
Okay, very good, Charlie. Thank you for that. I want to introduce a different type of question here. Since this is diverse talking heads, we're going to talk from a diverse point of view. Okay? If you remember a few years back, under a different presidential administration, there was a crisis that they called with Haitians trying to come into the U.S. And at the border, I believe it was Texas as well. Was it Texas? Was one of the southern borders. They were being stopped. They were being whipped with horse reins, this, that, and the other. And there was talk about building the wall at that point. I've been thinking a lot about, as you mentioned, the wall. And would it be, I know what we thought about it then. Did we not like it because of who was talking about building it? Or would it be a viable solution if only to control the stream of who's coming through the opening? And I throw that question out to whoever wants to take it. Would the wall be a viable solution to control who's actually coming in. They would have to come in, in a controllable fashion and be checked and this, that, and the other. It would be more control. Thoughts on that?
I'm going to talk again on this. I think, we can go back to the Berlin Wall and the communists on there. I think the problem with that is just the pure symbolism of that. That's, like I said, that's not what we're ultimately about. It doesn't solve the problem, obviously, but the wall itself, to me, transcends whoever was president at the time on that, and what doesn't matter which president supported it or didn't support it. But the idea of that, that's just not what we're about. It's just really hard to do that. I'm personally struggling with that idea. And I want to mention something else that I forgot to mention earlier. Here, I'm in the Chicago area here. And as you know, the city of Chicago has been welcoming to that's immigrants from that situation down there up to a certain number. However, they've come to Chicago, and most of them are staying like at the police station. They're sleeping on the floor at the police station. There's various police stations in the city of Chicago, and now they're just starting to get into the thing where they're going to try to get some kind of housing for them somewhere in the city or nearby. I'm not sure where that is. So, there's a lot of questions and issues, but philosophically, the city of Chicago has been welcoming to a certain extent to those people.
As well as New York,
Yes.
But when you have people in such overwhelming numbers and you have nowhere to put them, it becomes an issue. So they sleep on the police station's floor or they sit on the ground outside of buildings. And it's not a good look. It's not humane. Damn.
So a couple things. First off, I don't believe the wall works, so it's a waste of time and energy and destruction to the environment and just about everything else. And it's built by cronies, and there's corruption with that kind of money going out. And actually, most of what's already built is fallen over because they built it so badly. You can't wall off the whole border because then you could just fly over it. So, and the interesting thing is actually more migrants come in flying into the United States than they do by walking in. I'm bothered a little bit about the tone of the conversation. We keep talking about our danger, and we are a country of immigrants that seems to not like immigrants. Most of the people who we know about are being bussed and all these kind of things are coming in under our asylum system, which is under our current law, which is, we all agree, is broken. And it right now takes years, sometimes a decade, to get your case to come around. And in the meantime, we don't allow those people legally to work. So if you're going to let them in, give them a work permit, have them pay taxes. Don't hit people from both sides. It's like blaming the poor for being poor, or blaming a oppressed group for being oppressed. It's like your own fault that the other people are prejudiced against you. So I'm a little bothered by that. My own father's an immigrant. So, and to Marcette's point, I remember several years ago in Chicago, the largest groups of immigrants were Irish and Polish, and nobody complained. And they were the two largest groups that came into Chicago. We also have a very large Mexican community here, and many other ethnic groups, and that brings a vibrancy and a re-energizing. So when I say it's a federal problem, we have to solve the overall. There's a push and a pull. There's a push because of horrible things happening in other countries and economic despair, like in Venezuela with a broken country. And there's pull because we have opportunity. And there's work, and there's actually a lot of work out there for folks to come in. We actually have a need for it. So there's all these different pieces going through.
All right, Dan, but I need to stop you right there for a second, because when you go to get a job, what do they ask you for?
Oh, you mean the I-9? Yeah, the I-9.
They want to know where you live, right? They want your social security. They want to know that you're there for the right reasons, and you want the job. You go looking for the job. The job don't go looking do, right?
I
In most
agree.
cases. So I don't like the way the whole situation is. I've been thinking about this one the entire summer,
Okay.
especially
That's the
in the
beauty
last,
of this discussion.
yeah, especially in the last 48 hours to present this to you guys and get this conversation going. But we're at the point now where something has to give.
Mhm.
Okay, it's getting cold in New York and Chicago. Okay, we have to have somewhere to put these people. We have to have a way to uh, have them be some sort of stable that they can
Mhm.
have a job address to go looking for a job, you know. And then there's still the issue with not everybody coming through. And I get it about immigrants. You know, this country built on immigrants. Totally agree with that. Okay, also built on the backs of slaves, but that's another
Yes,
story
I
for another
agree.
episode.
I
That's
agree
another
with that.
episode. But still,
Yeah.
by letting people in willy nilly, without proper screening, whatever you want to call it, we still have these people that may be undesirable or taking opportunities to damage our infrastructure. Okay,
Mhm.
be it with drugs, be it with guns, be it with alternative reasons that they have. Marset, you've been kind of quiet for the last few minutes. I see something on your face. You
Um,
want to say something?
no, I'm listening. You know, I'm the new person, so I'm just listening and trying to, you know, pick my shots. I do think, to Dan's point, that and to your point, I do see this as being a possible opportunity. We talk about the border wall, and I think few people don't necessarily agree that it's the best solution. Now, I do believe that some portions of the border do need to be secured and walled in, but I personally think that that's a good opportunity to push more jobs. I think if you take some of the money that they're using that is shown to be ineffective in putting up walls, I think that could be more salaries for different border patrol agents. I think that there could be salaries for counselors trying to get people services at the border that, you know, could transform into good paying jobs for American citizens to facilitate those things. I also feel that those monies can be redirected if you're talking about saying, okay, well, you have to have an address and different paperwork to get a job. Then it's kind of what they're doing on a temporary basis. They're putting people in different hotels and such. Then if you're saying, okay, you tie them back to that hotel, I'm at the Bristol, I'm, you know, tenant 1A at the Bristol, blah, blah, blah. His male or her male can go there and then they can be gainfully employed. Something similar to what I always feel that they could do for the homeless population. I think that there are opportunities in crisis, but the powers that be, due to, I think someone mentioned cronyism in terms of the wall and construction, because of those things, those monies never get allocated in those ways. It always stays the same old, same old. So I do think that there's a possible solution here, but we've got to think differently than, okay, well, my buddy, the senator's second cousin, has a concrete business, and that's $4 million of concrete he can pour across the border.
Very good. Now, and I do agree with what you said, Marset. My research has shown that the president, or I should say Congress, it allows X amount of refugees to come into the country every year through the proper channels. Okay. And it looks like that number was raised to 62,500 by the Biden administration. So that was in 2021, let's say. And the countries that they consider for admission into the U.S., and we're talking about refugee admission, is Africa, East Asia, Europe and Central America, Latin American slash the Caribbean, Near East, South Asia, and the last is what they group together as unallocated reserve. And that comes up to the 62,500. Now, in Chicago, and I don't, this number I have here, it cannot be right. It says 15,000 migrants brought to Chicago since August of last year. I don't believe that number. I think that's way low. And it says this is one day ago. And in New York City, it says since April 2022, more than 116,000 have arrived in New York City. So we are way over the amount that can come in, that we can um, budget for, that we can allocate, that we can properly place. We're at a point that we need to do something. If you could solve this, if you could come up with one aspect of solving this, what would it be? I'm asking you to put your creative hats on for a minute. If you could do something, uh, be it spur government, spur states, uh, some kind of housing, what would your part of the solution be? And I'll let you guys jump in as the light bulb comes on. Kaushal.
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas here. One is environmentally related. As you all know, the climate crisis is just growing worse and worse. We've been warning Americans for decades to do something about it, but I guess the country's just too conservative to do anything about it. And especially the equatorial parts of the world are going to feel the feel the heat. So we're we are only going to get more immigrants, well, much more in the future, because they need to go somewhere where they can live. So we have to take the environment seriously. We have to adopt clean energy, completely stop using fossil fuels. And this will require a lot of workers to change our and maintain our new green infrastructure. So in that way, there will always be jobs for immigrants if we take the environment seriously. The other idea I have is kind of a wacky one. It's based on an episode of Patriot Act on Netflix, which is hosted by Hassan Minaj. He said something that completely shocked me. I'm not certain is correct, but it's intriguing. He said that a lot of the immigration we're getting from the South is because of gun proliferation happening in those countries. And the proliferation is being caused by gun manufacturers in the States. The lax gun control laws we have is not only creating tons of guns in
No,
our
I've heard
own
that.
country, but allowing them to be exported to other countries. So we need to take gun control seriously too. Then other countries will be safer, so that fewer people scared for their lives will feel the need to emigrate.
All right. Very thoughtful. Thank you, Kaushal. Marcette, did you say something?
Yeah, I was just saying that I had seen some studies. I know that they were doing one. I remember if it was called Fast and Furious, or I remember the code name for the study, where they actually tracked certain guns that were being moved from the United States down to the southern border and past, and some of those were being involved in crimes. But you know, people got upset because they knew that they were tracking them, but they were just trying to find out, because they didn't intervene in a lot of the crimes that were being committed with those guns until the end of the study. But yeah, they've been showing where a lot of the guns from here, which is, I'm sure, a whole different podcast for you guys in terms of the gun policy here in the United States. But a lot of the guns from here end up in South America, and they ended up being causing used in a lot of the crimes there. So that study I've seen a few times.
Anyone else want to jump in? Amy.
Yeah, my idea is really crazy and it's never going to happen. But you said to put our creative thinking caps on. So that's what I'm going to throw out. So at the time we were recording this, there's a federal government shutdown looming. And even though the Department of Homeland Security will continue to act, visa processing will probably be affected. And we are also reeling from a pandemic where there is still a backlog of things such as visas, et cetera, being processed. I think that's adding to some of the crisis that we're talking about, is that it is taking longer to place people because of a lack of resources. So that got me thinking, what if, and I know that election cycles are different for the Senate, for the House, but for, let's call it the equivalent of a entire presidential term, so 4 years, every single member of the branches of government, so the not judicial, but executive and legislative, was a first generation immigrant, every single one. That would make a lot of people unhappy, which is why it's never going to happen, but literally every single one. I think that would go a long way to decriminalizing the perceived otherness of people that are coming into this country. And I think that a lot of work could get done to move things forward, because I think a lot of the things we're talking about have very practical solutions. Again, teaching folks English, or let's teach everyone else Spanish. Why not? Finding jobs, working on, green solutions, as Kushal mentioned. Again, I know that's crazy, but I think if we could actually trust other people to be in charge and come up with solutions and not have our heads so far up our butts in some situations, I think we could really see a lot of creative solutions there. And I'm talking about not us, but the current government, where there's a lot of heads up buddiness, in my opinion.
Head up buddiness. I love that. I love that, rather than the word that's going to get us that little red E on the episode. Thank you so much for that, Amy. Dan.
So it turns out that immigration judges are actually administrative judges that are hired by Homeland Security. So the first thing I would do is make them real judges, so they can actually do stuff, and they can make rulings, and we have to increase their numbers dramatically to clear the present backlog, because we have this asylum problem, we have this immigration problem, we have what you referred to, Calvin, where there's criminal elements who've come in, where we have to take care of those cases and remove them. And then in parallel to that, Congress has to rewrite the entire system from top to bottom and fund it. So funding includes Border Patrol, funding includes housing, it includes distributing people to areas that need workers. It means giving temporary permits. It means giving a path to citizenship for certain groups like DACA and things like that. So I would like to see a comprehensive system redone, and that's the only time we're going to finally fix this. But in the meantime, let's take a chunk of it. Let's increase our judges dramatically. Let's give them real power to actually act, and let's clear the backlog. So it doesn't take 10 years for somebody to sit in an asylum and not know what's happening with their life.
Good point. Karen?
May I ask a question? Okay, there was a law in place by a previous administration that limited the amount of people who could migrate into the Americas, right? And we were able to control that. We didn't have the same amount of people coming across the borders that we have now. What was done? Was anyone able to find out what was done to limit, to stay within those perimeters of how many people can cross across the American border?
Well, I do know that some of them were turned back. I don't know where they went, how they got there, but they were not allowed to come in. We already talked about the Haitians that tried to come in, and they were, beat up by Border Patrol. I'm not sure what happened with them either, but that's a very good question, Karen. Anybody have anything to add to that?
Can I say one more thing? I'm listening. These are things. Sometimes you read the little small articles about immigration, and when our previous administration, when Donald Trump was president, There were articles almost every other week talking about the number of people who were deported from the United States of America back to their countries that at one point in time were chaotic, war torn, as they would say. There were 850 people, 850,000 people who were sent back to Czechoslovakia, Haiti, Africa, Venezuela, Colombia, different places, Mexico, and droves of people were sent back. So how did we manage to go through all of those people, find all those people to send them back, but yet we can't control the amount of people coming in? Like it, and I know this is what Homeland Security is supposed to do. When they created Homeland Security, it was supposed to minimize the invasion of immigrants in America. And what are they doing? What are they doing?
Anyone else have something to say on that? Well, I will add. Marseille, go
No,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that it seems that just listening to everyone else's answers, it seems that there's a few people who feel that reallocation of resources is a big part of solving the problem. So I'm just glad to hear that. So I think people feel that there are some tangible solutions, but it would require reworking, the status quo to some extent, and how monies are spent and what programs are being implemented now.
Okay. My little solution is regarding working, and this was done with the Ukrainians coming into the U.S. Of course, the Ukrainians, when they left their country, a lot of them moved to neighboring countries, Poland and all, but some came into the US and they got their work visas on an expedited basis if they had relatives in the US that could, I guess, sponsor them or, speak for them or whatever. Uh, I think that may work in this case as well. That would expedite some people uh, getting uh, the ability to work a little quicker. And instead of what the president proposed or is going to do, and the people from Venezuela could get to jump the line and start working sooner than anybody else. I don't exactly think that's fair because of their country. I think everyone should get an even shot in this to get their ability to work. Well, we're going to take our break. I want to thank our panelists for this stimulating conversation. I know my brains is like, swollen a little bit from taking all this in. And this is definitely something that we may want to come back and revisit in a few months because it's not over. It's just getting started. We're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we will have our round robin discussion only on Diverse Talking Heads podcast. And we are back. This is Diverse Talking Heads podcast. I'm your host, Calvin Gibbs, and this is our round robin discussion. A topic that the panelists don't know about, coming off the top of my head. And the topic is, how can we stop deforestation? How can we stop deforestation? I know that where I live out here in the suburbs of Joliet, Plainfield, Illinois, this used to be farmland. And more, I see the fields being taken away, the farms being taken away, and they're putting up houses left and right. I am currently in the process of purchasing another home in South Carolina, and they are just knocking trees down left and right. But when you do that, there's things that go along with it. You're taking away natural um, preserves or reserves from the animals, uh, from the air, so on and so forth. So, how can we stop deforestation? Or should we stop it? Panelists, I throw it out to you.
Eat less meat.
Mm,
Meat takes up a ton of agricultural land, a lot more than what plants need. So if we eat less meat, we will cut down fewer trees.
but Kosher, I'm going to judge a barbecue contest of the weekend. Can I possibly can I possibly start after the weekend?
Well, you make me a promise, Calvin. Whoever wins is the only person in that state allowed to make barbecue from there on.
Okay, okay. That sounds great. Amy, jump in.
I'm going to come in with another kind of crazy idea. If our entertainment industry was to start idolizing not giant sprawling mansions, but a more modest style of living. I'm not saying get rid of all homes, cram everybody in apartments, or really tiny homes. That works for some people, not everyone. But if our mindset was such that you just simply as an individual or a family don't need such a big footprint, would that have a trickling effect of maybe fewer people would want to keep moving farther and farther out? Because part of the reason you move is because you get a bigger yard, you get a bigger house, you get a bigger yard. If you're in an established suburb, then you get what you get. You feel like your neighbors are on top of you. That's quote unquote bad. So if we were to just change our mindset a little, and I'm looking at in general the entertainment industry, so books, movies, are there still magazines? Do those still exist? And we stopped with, this is glamorous, but something that just wasn't quite as big of a real estate footprint. Would we be able to slow this massive spread that you're talking about?
Okay. So far we've heard eat sustainably, join the movement, or I should say spread the word, or join the movement. Anybody else? Dan.
To Kutchel's point, 90% of corn grown in this country is for animal feed. 8% goes into corn products, and 2% is if you eat corn on the cob. So we only eat 2% of what we grow. So just an aside. So I read that recently. Illinois being a state that grows a lot of stuff. Illinois used to have 21 million acres of prairie. We now have 6,000. So development is a big piece. So I don't think we'll be able to stop development immediately. So I have an alternative idea. We should ban lawns. You should not be able to grow an expanse of grass.
Okay.
It's bad for, let me finish. It's bad for the environment. It takes a lot of chemicals. You have to cut it with a motorized device. It takes extreme care. You increase the noise pollution taking care of it. And for instance, in Illinois, if you grew prairie plants instead of grass, they have deep roots, they are fire resistant, they keep erosion from happening. So it's an idea that we brought over from England and it's obsolete. I would totally ban. Also, why you wasting drinking water by pouring it on your lawn that we've taken trouble to process? So I would ban lawns. I would make laws that do not allow housing associations to require lawns. And I would actually change the tax code so there are incentives that you get a reduction in your property tax if you remove your lawn and put more natural products, including trees. I think that one thing would change dramatically the deforestation happening in America.
Could I also get an increase in the street value, the viewing value of my
We
property?
would be viewing it differently if we all did it.
Mm, I think it would go down before it goes up, though. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Possibly.
See, that's a problem for me. I
I
I
didn't
don't want
say it was going to happen easily, and that's why I said
I
I
don't.
didn't think development was going to stop. So here's an alternative.
Okay, okay, sounds good. It took me 9 years to get the
You
equity
asked
in this
for
home.
ideas,
I
Calvin.
don't want to lose any of it. Anybody else? Anybody else? All
I think
right.
addressing addressing the affordable housing crisis. So I know where I am too, there was a lot of vacant land, and then just they're popping up these huge apartment complexes all over the place now, and that's because a lot of people have not been able to purchase homes anymore because the median price of home has gone up like 20-30%. So instead of being able to purchase an existing home, what a lot of these companies are doing in construction, they're building these huge, like I said, where I am, complexes where there was once greenery and different land and parks and that kind of thing. They were buying them out and purchasing to build these huge apartment complexes. So we're going to have to address the affordable housing crisis in this country anyway. And again, that's another thing that can fall into the previous topic. A lot of those places can be repurposed for immigrants, for homeless, et cetera, that are currently existing.
All right. Thank you very much, Marcette. Very good point. Amy.
I want to piggyback off of what Marcette was saying, and this might be taking us in another show topic direction. But I've been reading about what things such as Airbnb and the extremely negative effect that is having on affordable housing. Fascinating. Has really made me think that I will never stay in that kind of establishment again, since it is taking affordable housing and away from folks that could use it. So sorry, that's not directly related, but I'm so glad you brought that up, Marcette, because it's just affordable housing is a huge topic, and there's a lot of kind of tentacles, as with any topic, that you might not think about off the top of your head.
All right. Well, that's about all, y'all, for this episode of Diverse Talking Heads podcast. I want to thank our panelists today, Charlie, Kaushal, Amy, Karen, Marcette, and Dan. And it's always important that we take two steps to the rear and get on out of here. Until the next episode of Diverse Talking Heads podcast, exit stage left.